everyone, Nidia here. Yep, these are a lot of books. They're very heavy. I'm going to put them down and welcome back to my channel. So, for everybody who is new to this channel, my name is Nidia. I do every week a video on different kinds of books and other things that end up on my shelf basically that might be of interest to you. I have recently been focusing on self-help and self-empowerment and spiritual books. And this week, I'm going to be talking about that massive stack that you've just seen because I have realized that I have about 200 and counting self-empowerment books on my shelf. I love all of them. I find them very helpful, very useful. I dip into them every now and then, but I just realized that for anybody who's new to this genre or doesn't read self-empowerment this much, it can seem quite a lot. So let me start by just coming back to the title of this video, which is all about the self-empowerment aisle. What do you do? Does anybody go down there anymore? Does everybody just discreetly buy on kind of like online books? Well, I'm going to just start first of all by saying that I think that this is a fantastic genre, and I'm so glad that today there are so many books available that are about self-empowerment on different topics and different subjects. I personally got into this subject about 13 years ago, but you know, self-empowerment books have been around for decades and I don't think they're going anywhere, and I think more than ever actually that they're proliferating, and there's such a huge variety that it can actually feel overwhelming. So anyway, welcome back to my channel again. I've said that already, and before I forget, hit the click like, notify, the subscription button, and leave your comments below for this topic. The questions for you are going to be, how did you come across self-empowerment literature? What was your introduction to it and how did you find it? So yep, I'm going to start with that. So yeah, let me just talk about this huge stack first of all that I put up here, and let me come back to how many books have I got here. So I've got here approximately, I don't know, 10 books? Yeah, about 10 books. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yeah. And yeah, this is a huge stack. The one at the bottom there, I think, is about finding the right person to date. This is about our shadow selves. This is Byron Katie, questioning your thinking, which I've talked about loads. This is a book that's from someone that goes down the Buddhist path. This is again more of a psychoanalytical reflection book. The Secret, many of you know, is about the law of attraction. Louise Hay talks a lot about self-empowerment through healing of our bodies and our minds and our spirit. This is Anthony de Mello, a very famous Indian Jesuit priest who passed away a few years ago, but he still is very much alive, I think, in spirituality today. Donald Walsh, who is very famous in terms of his thesis and his discussions on conversations with God, and of course Eckhart Tolle, who I've mentioned many times on this channel. So that's quite a few authors, and that was just a few that I picked up there. Actually, there's a lot more on my shelf, and I just realized that for those who might be new to this area, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. So what do you do if you're interested in self-help, self-empowerment, spiritual self-growth, all these different terms that we have today, looking at our shadow sides? Where does somebody begin? Why would they want to seek out this literature? And I want to start off by I'm just grabbing my notes here, looking at kind of like, you know, why bother? And I think people end up in this aisle. Traditionally, we all went to the bookshelf and, you know, the aisle in a shop. Today we scroll on online stores that are available, but and we also get pop-ups in our social media. But where do we begin with this? And I think first and foremost, it's because at some point many of us find ourselves at a crossroad, and perhaps the traditional roots of just talking to friends, being part of a religious organization or a spiritual organization or just a form of community, at some point it's kind of like, I need help, you know, or somebody says, I need to just kind of like tackle this issue from a different perspective, and where do I begin, and what do I do, and usually at that point we kind of like start thinking, it'd be good to read a book, or perhaps a friend has recommended a book and said, look, I've just read this fantastic book called I Need Your Love, Is That True, by this woman called Byron Katie. I thought it was fantastic. It helped me to really question my need to be in a relationship, and I think maybe you want to check it out. Maybe that's how you go into self-help or self-empowerment. And then another aspect is that we might be dealing with a situation in our lives, a past life trauma coming up again. Perhaps we're dealing with something happening in the current life scenario to do with work, or to do with a relationship, or to do with family, or an illness. So there are different avenues by which we end up looking at this genre. And I personally think that it can be today very, very overwhelming. I think 10, 15 years ago, there was already quite a lot out there. I think today, with technology the way it is, and more books and literature coming out, it can feel even more kind of like, okay, where do I even begin with this? And so a few pointers and tips is, first and foremost, if you are new to this area, I would suggest writing down actually why you might want to go into self-empowerment literature. Is it because it's just something that you want to discover for yourself, or is it something because you're facing a situation? It's good to just have a note of what you're really looking for in that sense, and the question to be answered, let's put it that way. The other thing that might help is that for some people, it's good to have a recommendation. So, it's okay to actually look on YouTube or another social media platform to see what recommendations there are. For example, if you're looking for a self-empowerment book when it comes to relationships, perhaps you're dealing with something and you're thinking, okay, I really want to read about what's going on here because I seem to be coming across the same problem in my relationship with my partner. It's okay to check on YouTube, and it's okay to check on social media platforms what's the current kind of the speakers that are out there, because a lot of them do have books. But it's also good perhaps to call a friend and actually say, have you been reading anything? Could you recommend something? So that's two different avenues. And finally, the other avenue that I actually recommend is it's okay to actually go to a place like Amazon and just go through books that are quite popular on that area and look at even the reviews and the comments that are left behind it. And that can give you also an idea of, a book to check out. For me, one of the books that actually really helped me, that avenue that really helped me was, I found Marissa Peer's You Can Be Thin. And it is an excellent book, and I just think it was just a fantastic kind of avenue into looking at when I was facing issues around body and things to do with eating. It was a fantastic book, and I actually picked that up because on Amazon it was very well recommended. I think at the time I spent something like 10 or 12 euros, the equivalent of about £10 or £8 on it, and I remember ordering it, and I just thought it's okay to take a punt on this, basically. And it actually worked out really well. It is an excellent book. So I suggest also having a look at the reviews of the books, not just in terms of newspaper articles, but do check out Amazon as well. The other thing that you might want to look at is is it helpful to have a book which is more written as a memoir, self-empowerment style? There are books that are in that category, and that could be, for example, I'm just going to pick up something from here, but a good author of that is Anthony DeMello, Seek God Everywhere, and he's, of course, this is from a more spiritual angle, and discussions around awakening and getting in touch with our inner self in that sense. But some of the books out there are very much more autobiographical or biographical, i.e. memoir, with experiences in there that can then help other people. And I think that there is so much out there that if that's what you're looking for, that might be better suited towards you. The other kind of books that I personally really like are the ones that are actually very much clear cut, those that have exercises in them. So there might be experiences in there, but the author is actually very keen to help people get to a particular kind of like, here's a set of exercises, or this is the challenge that you might be facing. Here's a set of exercises, try and do. And I think that those books kind of like really cut to the chase, and their self-empowerment is really kind of like, it's like a toolkit basically. It's like coaching in a book. And for some people who might not have the budget to have the means to pay for coaching at that time, or therapy or counseling, a book might be a good way to start off until they might be able to get also one-to-one help if that's not available at that point for them. So I just, I recommend also that might be something to think about. Am I looking for something that just helps me clearly get to an objective? And then finally, the other kind of like self-empowerment books that I think that I can also kind of like forget are self-empowering, but through a very covert way, are some of the fictional literature that I've read in the past. And, there are authors that have touched me in terms of, it's a story and it's a storytelling avenue. And they might have, of course, be mixing it with their own experiences, and the plot does include, of course, their own experience or experiences of the people around them. But it is a fictional story, and some of the great authors, I'm thinking of Khaled Hosseini and A Thousand Splendid Suns is one of the ones that just popped into my mind there for a second. There's also, Margaret Atwood and plenty of other authors where it's fictional writing, but it is actually quite empowering as well. And I just don't want to discount it. So I just wanted to mention them as well. So there's plenty of stuff out there in terms of self-empowerment, but going back to, if you're new to this genre, where do you begin, or what do you want to start with, is first of all to think about what is the need that you need to address, basically, or the why of seeking a self-empowerment book. And then secondly, what kind of toolkit are you looking for? Are you looking for something that's very calming and soothing and storytelling, like a fictional book? Or are you looking for a memoir which has experiences that can directly help you? Or finally, is it a book such as really like a coaching book, but it's basically a coaching set of workshops that have been made into a book, and that have very direct help. And then just saying, the other thing that perhaps that would be good to consider is to look at your own kind of like being and what's appealed to you and your own origins. For some people, it's really helpful to have books which are very much closer towards their own traditional base, or their spiritual belief, or gender orientation. And that helps because it's coming from a very much more comfortable place. And especially when somebody is facing, or myself, we've faced challenges that are very personal, such as an illness or a grief or a breakup or something like that. Sometimes it is good to go to one's own tradition and where you're coming from. And I think that's beautiful, and we should embrace it, because we do need to be careful with ourselves when we're in a very, very vulnerable state, to find things that might help tap into us that are to do with our own origins and traditions. Likewise, it might also be good sometimes that when you're facing something like that, to consider traditions that are completely different from yours. And that can be because they just help to have a much more refreshing approach to a situation. One of the speakers that comes to mind right now, and I've read his book, I haven't got it at hand right now, but I just want to mention him, is Joel Osteen. He does also a lot of YouTube videos that you might have seen. But, he comes from a very, he has a biblical background. He's a Baptist preacher, as I understand. And what I also find about him so refreshing, though, is that because he's coming from a tradition which is not my own personal tradition, when he sometimes speaks about some of the challenges we face, and then using, a religious belief, though, but it is kind of like very clear about how, he brings faith into tackling a situation. I find it very refreshing sometimes to have speakers and authors that are very different from where I come from, because it helps to cut through the noise. So these are just some of the tactics and tools that I'm mentioning here about and approaching self-empowerment, and what could be helpful for you. Are there authors or traditions that you have come across in your journey right at the beginning that have helped you. Perhaps they're more closer to how you were raised, or the lifestyle that you've had. Perhaps they're very different and that helped you as well. And the other thing I want to ask is, how did you approach self-empowerment? Was it just a trip to the local bookstore and looking on on the bookshelf? Actually, I did that quite a lot at the beginning. When I was in my late 20s, I would just go and just look at the bookshelf and try and figure out what I was interested in, read the back of a book. Or is it today using technology because of social media on Facebook and on YouTube and other places? The algorithm is set that sometimes suggestions are made, and that's helped you pick up an author and discover something completely new. So I just wanted to ask and put that out there. This is a bit of a ramble, but I hope some of you find that helpful. I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you again for tuning in today and for all your support. Please do share this with others. I'm trying to now build the community and the network, so really good to just have your support, and thank you again.